Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at MS Dynamics World. On this episode, we are talking about how the direct bill CSP model for Microsoft partners is changing and how you as a partner can prepare while continuing to run your business in this space. There are a few key facts, considerations, and decision points about whether any organization should stay the course or move to an indirect model, and we are here to talk about it. So I have three guests joining me from Stratos Cloud Alliance. They are the sponsor of this episode, and they are also actively helping partners in this space work through some of these changes and decisions. So welcome to all of you. Let's start with some introductions so our listeners can just get a chance to know who we are talking with today. So Scott, why don't I start with you? Welcome back, I think. Great to have you.
Well, thanks, Jason. As always, appreciate you guys hosting us, and good to see you again coming off Directions. My name is Scott May. I'm the Director of Channel Development with Stratos Cloud Alliance. And, we've been doing this for, at least 7 years as an indirect distributor with Microsoft. And now we're helping direct partners move to the indirect model and doing that smoothly, efficiently, and profitably. So we're glad to be on today's session.
All right. Well, great to have you. Valerie, welcome to you as well. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Valerie Borak. I'm a partner development manager here at Stratos Cloud Alliance. And when we bring on new partners, they get assigned to one of our partner development managers like me, and we work with the partner to move them through the process as smoothly as possible.
All right, great. And Susan, welcome to you.
Thank you. I'm Susan Guy. I'm the Partner Enablement Manager here at Stratos, and my main role is onboarding our new partners. And a lot of times those are going to be direct partners moving to indirect and making sure that transition over to their PDM, like Valerie, is a smooth process and that everything goes well for the partner.
All right. Well, we have a lot to really dive into today, so I'm glad to have you all here. And as I mentioned, we want to talk about the direct reseller or the direct bill CSP model for Microsoft partners and how it's changing. So Scott, maybe I'll start with you at a high level. What's the difference between direct and indirect resellers?
Yeah, just real quick, direct means you're working directly with Microsoft and you're getting your bills and invoices and you're doing your ordering and everything, through Microsoft directly. Indirect model is you're working through a Microsoft distributor for CSP licensing. And in that instance, it just changes really where you're getting billed from. You're not getting billed from Microsoft. You're getting billed from Stratos, and you're doing all your ordering and everything through the Stratos marketplace that we provide to you. So you're really just switching kind of who's billing you and where you're doing the ordering. The rest of kind of what you do in Microsoft Partner Center and supporting your clients and everything else really remains the same.
Valerie or Susan, anything you would add that you typically need to explain or talk about with partners to make sure that they're straight on it?
I think when they come to us, they're already, Scott's already informed them on, kind of where they are in the process. For me, the key things are that they're very aware of the timing of moving from direct to indirect, because there are some very specific times that Microsoft has set up in terms of, when you're going to lose access to your customers, when your customers are going to get notifications and things of that nature. So once Valerie and I start working with a partner, we want to make sure they're completely aware of Microsoft's timing in terms of moving from direct to indirect.
All right, great. Yeah, and we'll dive into some of those details, I think, more as we go here. So what's really changing now? And Scott, maybe I can go back to you on this. What's really changing now, and how are partners moving as a result?
Yeah, there's a couple major points that are changing with Microsoft that are going to cause partners to either think about going indirect or being forced to go indirect. And those are first and foremost, basically the revenue requirement is changing from $300,000 per year in a trailing 12-month cycle to up to 1 million. So that's a significant jump, right? So if you're not doing 1 million in CSP revenue at Microsoft's cost in a trailing 12-month period, you're no longer able to go through and maintain your direct status with Microsoft, and you're going to need to move to the indirect model. A couple other things are basically solution designations. You're going to be required to hold solution designations and specializations. So, that can certainly be costly from a standpoint of getting people through those and making sure that you get those certifications. Going to the indirect model, you don't need to have those solution designations. It's still good to have them, which we can talk about later. but you certainly don't have to have them to go indirect. Some of the other things are maintaining your own marketplace, making sure you're meeting Microsoft's security compliance from a marketplace perspective and things of that nature. But the major two are basically the trailing 12-month revenue of $1 million and the solution designation and specializations that a partner is going to have to go through and maintain.
All right. Was there anything anyone wanted to add?
Well, one of the things I feel like we found out in this process, one of the things that is changing is an audit that Microsoft is doing for direct partners now. And even if you hit the threshold of the $1 million, if you don't pass their audit, they will still take your status away. So the audit is a big deal. One of the main things on that is having your own marketplace, which a lot of direct partners do not have. They've just been billing their customers internally the same way they always have over the years. And that is a big piece of being a direct partner, is having your own marketplace. So what we have found is even if partners hit the $1 million threshold, if they are not passing the audit, they are still getting their status removed.
Jason, I'll add on to that as well, because we have a couple partners like this. There's some partners who are just direct selling CSP, but then there's some other partners who are going through the Microsoft Embed program, which is basically as an ISV, they're selling Microsoft CSP basically through their own brand. And so there's different levels. If you're an Embed ISV partner, you now have to meet a $500,000 minimum trailing 12-month requirement for the ISV kind of CSP that you're reselling. And you still have to go through and meet the total of $1 million in trailing 12 months. So, you either, have to meet it all within kind of the embed program, or if you have to have a mix of kind of embed CSP revenue as well as just standard CSP revenue. So little caveat, if there's any kind of partners that are in the embed program, we've got a couple that we're working with right now that ran into that. So
yeah, that's really interesting. And this really, I think, says a lot about how Microsoft wants to work with partners, right? They are putting these higher standards on the direct CSP model for probably some key reasons. Do you want to talk a little bit more about maybe what some of the motivation is that they've maybe directly told the channel?
Yeah, I think, they're looking to go, not very many partners are what they call managed partners anymore, Jason, right? I think there's only something in the neighborhood of like 60 or 65 managed partners, right? So, Microsoft continues to go through and set the bar a little higher. They really want to go through and have those partners that aren't managed working with the distributor that can go through and help them with the resources to help them build their practice probably more efficiently necessarily than Microsoft could for the non-managed partners, right? Just more direct access to resources, people like Susan and Val and our partner development managers, our professional resources team, our pre-sales engineering, our marketing. We're just able to go through and be more responsive and more supportive to partners in the indirect model than non-managed partners who are still direct, with Microsoft. And we've heard from several of the partners that moved to us from direct that weren't managed partners saying that we're a lot easier to work with. We provide them a lot more hands-on support. We're quicker to respond. They just see more value, if you will, in working with us as a indirect distributor than what they were getting as a non-managed partner working with Microsoft. And I think Microsoft recognizes that and is saying, hey, we can go through and support the distributor, and we get support from Microsoft to help support our partners. And we continue to go through and invest in our partners and programs and enablement that we drive. And so those partners that move to the indirect model really become a managed partner with us, which they weren't really getting that type of support and direction from Microsoft.
Are you hearing any other concerns from partners about losing direct status, I guess you'd say, and things that they're coming to you with?
Val, you want to address that? You worked with several of them that, we brought over. What were their concerns?
Some of their concerns were their reduction in their margin, which does happen. Some of their concerns were also the access to their customers in partner center. They still have access to their clients and they can still see what their clients and attach to them, but they can't see their subscriptions like they used to be able to. And that is, something they have to get used to. It's not that we can't provide them that, but it is something that happens when you move from direct to indirect. Sometimes they have issues with an indirect reseller link is different than a direct reseller link, right? So when they become an indirect reseller, they have to reassociate to every one of their customers. Their global admin has to accept a new link, and that new link also adds in their indirect distributor's name. So they have to decide how they're going to explain their move from direct to indirect to their customer base, which is something that maybe they didn't really think through. And it's not a hard thing to explain. I'm purchasing my licenses a different way. This is my new link for who I'm purchasing through. There's not a big deal that they should make out of it, but they do have to reassociate with every customer, no matter where they go.
So Jason, again, I'm in the pre-sales end of it, and, margin is definitely a big question. And really, they don't lose, that much margin. And most of them kind of, once they find out what we pay, are kind of surprised that basically what they're going to get value for what we provide versus what they basically are, losing maybe in margin. And sometimes they don't even lose margin. So, it can basically be a positive value add benefit for them to move. They don't lose access to their customers. We don't go through and become the partner of record. They're still the partner of record. They still can, do what they need to with those clients. So, in the end, I guess the perception is it's negative to move to indirect, right? They're thinking that it's like a demotion, if you will. It's not. It really can be a positive benefit because all the value that we as a distributor bring that they weren't getting from Microsoft. And we as Stratos Cloud Alliance, we really focus on business applications. We support the entire Microsoft Cloud platform. So M365, Azure, Copilot, D365. But we have a breadth and depth within the business application space that no other distributor has. So those partners that are moving to us that are selling business applications, Business Central, CE, FNSCM, they're getting access to all the resources that we can bring to bear to help them build and grow their practice, quicker, more efficiently, less risk that they really weren't getting with Microsoft. So there's really a positive value add, and it's not a demotion, if you will, of moving from direct to indirect. Susan, anything to add?
No, I would say too, a lot of people, they have choices to make too when they make the decision to move from direct to indirect. I don't know if we're going to go into that in a little bit more detail, but I certainly can share some of the experiences we've had of both scenarios when they're a forced move or they're a move of choice.
Yeah, can you talk a little about some of those decision processes and the execution of it?
The move of choice, it's more of a low and slow. They can choose to move their customers over the course of the next year or so, whenever their subscriptions are coming up for renewal. That is perfectly fine way to do it. However, they're still managing, two different billing systems. They're putting new orders into one system and maintaining other orders in a different system. So a lot of people choose to go ahead and just move everybody at once. The people that have to move everybody at once are the ones that are getting removed from the program and have to move to indirect. They have a specific time frame starting at plus 30 from their renewal date, their partner renewal date, to the renewal date to T plus 30, T plus 60. And each of those things has things that happen. For example, at T plus 30, after their renewal date, the partner's customers will start getting emails from Microsoft letting them know that their partner is no longer part of the direct program. And that creates all kinds of nervousness on the behalf of the customers, and they're calling the partners and wanting to know what's going on. So in that case, we really do encourage people to have a distributor chosen well in advance of that renewal date, that they have put in place how, their tenant, their indirect tenant, all of that is ready to go, and that they have communicated with their customers that we're making this move. It won't affect you in any way. The billing will still continue with us. We're still your partner. However, we're just ordering a different way. And I usually encourage them to include that reseller link that Valerie mentioned earlier in that email. So everything's packaged up nicely to the customers. I think that's really key. The planning, the execution of the move is very, very important.
I imagine that plus 30 is a really minimalistic time frame if you have to work within those. I imagine most partners would prefer a little more space.
The ones that have run into the problems are the ones that didn't plan ahead, didn't really read some of the communication that Microsoft was sending in advance, or didn't realize it was going to affect them. And then all of a sudden, it's a rush. Now, we've been able to accommodate that. We certainly can, but we think it's better for the partner and their customers if we're doing planning, talking to Scott 6 months out about moving to Stratos and then starting to strategize how we're going to make that move.
Yeah. So Jason, just, to kind of be clear, so anybody listening, if you're going to lose your direct status, you'll start to get notifications 90 days out from Microsoft. So they have a time frame of T-90. You get your initial communication, and then they have another communication at T-60, and then they have another communication at T-30. So, partners definitely are being notified in enough time to do an evaluation and make the switch so that they don't get into a T+30. Because if they make the switch and start moving everybody, their clients aren't going to get that message from Microsoft, right? It's only the ones who wait too long. And then all of a sudden they're kind of trying to do it in a fire drill, if you will, where their clients are starting to get that communication.
I want to add, sometimes the clients get the communication anyway, even if they moved all their stuff on time and we've done everything right. Microsoft has some processes in place. So having that conversation with your clients saying, I'm making this move. If you receive communication from Microsoft, please understand that I'm already doing the steps needed to be taken to alleviate the emails you're receiving, but Microsoft, sometimes it slips through the cracks. Just making sure that you have that conversation with your clients, because we have had multiple clients multiple partners' clients who we've moved completely over to indirect. Their subscriptions are with us. Everything was done correctly, and they still received notification from Microsoft.
So Jason, basically our recommendation to partners would be proactive, right? Be transparent with your clients that this is happening and spin it that this could be a good thing because of the benefits that, we provide as a distributor, and over communicate, right? So that, the clients aren't being caught off guard and they understand what's happening.
100%.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about incentives. Microsoft is updating them. How do indirect partners take advantage of incentives as they continue to change?
Yeah, I'll take that one initially, and Susan and Val can chime in. But again, that's I think one of the misconceptions of moving from direct to indirect is that they won't be able to go through and get those back end incentives, when in fact that's untrue. Microsoft, working through the indirect distributor, actually would overpay, if you will, versus a direct partner, because we as a distributor get incentives as well. And the partner can still go through and get those back end incentives as long as they go through and meet the solution designation requirements for any incentives, that need that. Microsoft's also going through and making some changes where you don't even have to go through and have the full designation. You can go through and get incentives. Basically, if you meet, I think it's 25 points towards your designation. And correct me if I'm wrong, Susan or Val, I think it's 25,000 in trailing 12-month revenue. So they kind of lowered the bar, if you will, for those indirect partners to be able to go through and still get their back end incentives. And so they don't lose that much in the direct margin when they move over to indirect. They still can get through and get all their back end incentives. Plus they're working with the distributor who's going to go through and provide them a lot more value and resources and hands-on capabilities and support. So again, it's really can be a positive benefit to move from direct to indirect. Anything to add, Susan or Val, in regards to the incentives that you've seen?
I would just say the effort that we can put into helping a partner achieve their incentives. We try to lead them into the skilling that Microsoft provides. Anytime that we hear about something that we think will help our partners to achieve their designations, we try to share that. We've also done some things like our internal office hours with our partners, where we bring folks in and actually, showing people how to take advantage of their co-op and things like that to add additional fuel to the fire of getting them to work on their solutions designations. Now, a lot of these direct partners are going to have that, but some of them, may have lost it since, over time, and they need to reestablish that. So we're pretty proactive in getting partners involved in getting their solutions designations.
All right, great. So in chatting before this discussion, you mentioned that you're getting sort of a lot of questions from a lot of partners, but with similar themes, right? And so I thought we could go through some of those common questions and just sort of knock off some answers to those kind of quickly before we wrap up today's event, just to, address them, I guess, right? So should we jump into some of those questions now?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. So the first one was, how do you handle margin continuity if direct bill agreement expires?
We look at basically what the volume of, that partner that they're doing, CSP, and basically we have volume tiers. And most of the partners that are doing the 300K, that they had to maintain their direct, they would come over to us at the volume margin level, which is our highest margin. So they really don't go through and lose very many points, if you will, because they're starting out at our highest margin tier. There are certain circumstances where we're working with business applications partners to give them some additional incentive points within their first year to move those clients over as quickly as possible, which negates that kind of margin difference even less, almost to basically a net zero, if you will, difference. So there are those opportunities that we're working with partners to help them make that move as profitable as possible. And then obviously as smooth as a transition as possible.
Next question was, what happens if customers aren't moved at renewal?
Susan and I have this round and round we go. So from what we found out, even though documentation is different wherever you look, it seems to be that if a client hasn't moved to an indirect and they lose their status, they lose all their back-end incentives, they are unable to change the subscription at all, meaning they can't update it, like they can't upsize it, they can't do anything to change it, but it will renew. So if the customer is on a yearly, paid yearly, nothing will happen, but the partner themselves will not get any credit for that subscription any longer for their back-end incentives or their solution designation. So that's where the partners have to be very careful, because even if they don't move them because they want to wait until the renewal date comes up or something like that, they're going to lose credit for that customer if it is not moved. And so it's a very slippery slope that they will be on if they don't take action prior to the renewal. But they will still have access to that customer. The subscription doesn't go away from what we have found in our research and examples we have seen in specific partners.
And no new customers. They can't add any customers into that direct tenant.
Mm-hmm.
They can't place any orders. And like Val said, no upsizes, no downsizes, no activity whatsoever. So they're pretty much leaving that customer in limbo. It's best to get them moved.
All right. Some real world experience there. That's great. Can a partner move customers midterm on annual contracts? And what's the impact on renewal dates and payments?
So this is also very tricky, but it totally can work. They can move all their customers at whatever point they want. There's a transfer process Microsoft provides. We request, the indirect provider requests the transfer. We pull in the subscription. We request the transfer. We pull it into the system. But what happens on the billing, for set an example, annual paid annually. So they've paid the entire renewal upfront. We move it at the 6-month mark on the actual subscription terms. Okay. They are going to get credit back from Microsoft for the remaining time on that subscription. And their indirect provider is going to have to bill them for the date of transfer to the end of the subscription. So there is some accounting that will happen and some back and forth of money transfer. Microsoft will give you back the money in probably 60 days because that's what they bill. But your distributor is going to invoice you at the time of your transfer. So depending on your terms with your indirect provider, there could be some money exchange that doesn't equal out right at the date. We attempt to change our terms on those subscription invoices to help the partner with that offset, but the money is refunded to the partner. and then invoiced from the direct provider. That is a Microsoft process. It's the same across the board. On an annual paid monthly contract, if you try to do your transfers on the point of the term date, there shouldn't be much money there that is going to change hands, but Microsoft does bill to term. So any day we do the transfer, they will return the money back to the partner and they will invoice the new partner. So that is how transfers and midterm transfers will work. But it's totally doable and can be done fairly seamlessly with, filling out some information about your current subscriptions and then moving through the process with your current indirect provider, depending on what their process is.
And Jason, we've done that with some of the direct indirect partners, and sometimes we provide them an incentive to move everything over quicker, so it's easier for them just to go through and kind of have everything in one place versus kind of stretching it out over a 12-month period and having, what's the term, death by 1,000 paper cuts.
It's painful. That waiting till the end of the subscription to cancel and reorder is painful.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So some issues to work through or steps to work through, but options to work through?
Steps to work through, depending on what options you choose.
Yep. And that's why I keep bringing up planning. The further out you start thinking about these things, the smoother it'll go. And working with somebody like Valerie, who's been through this before, is going to make it a lot easier on a partner.
All right. Another question I think you're getting a lot. Do terms stay the same compared to distributor terms?
Terms do not stay the same, right? Microsoft basically has their own terms. Each distributor has kind of their own terms, right? That you will need to go through and evaluate and see if you need to get extended terms. We provide certain terms kind of to partners out of the gate that they need more extended terms. We have a credit application process that they can go through to get that and make sure that that gets set up. Kind of like what Val was going back to, switching with the annual paid annually. We work with partners to get the proper terms set up so that when Microsoft basically takes the time to give the credit back to the partner, and when we're billing the partner for the next 6 months, we try and work with them to go through and make sure that that's not a negative financial impact if possible. But terms definitely will not remain the same with what they have with Microsoft to go into an indirect distributor.
Can a firm work with multiple indirect providers?
You can have multiple indirect providers, and sometimes that's needed because, we as Stratos Cloud Alliance, we specialize just in the Microsoft cloud. So, if you need a distributor that also does AWS or Oracle or HP or anything else, you'll probably want to go through and have multiple distributors that you're connected with, and that's perfectly fine.
We may have already covered this one in enough detail, but I understand you're asked a lot about timing. What's the right timing to set up the change, and can you do it before direct expires? Is there anything else to add there?
Susan, Val, you guys want to take this one?
The time
Sooner
is
the better.
now. The time is now. Making sure when you receive that 90-day communication that you may be losing your direct status, the time is right then. You don't want to wait around. Hopefully you had some kind of inclination that this was coming and you've already started evaluating your choices and what you were going to do, but you really should get in the process by that 90-day marker to make it as smooth as possible on your customers. Can we do it quicker than that? Of course, we can do it very quickly, but the time at that 90-day marker is about the least amount of time you want to have to make that decision, but you can do it whenever you want.
Mm-hmm. And I will say too, we've had, I think almost everyone that we've had them set up their indirect tenant, we've had to have Microsoft support do a little bit of tweaking on the back end because of certain things with the tenant. And so we need to allow for that type of thing that we have to, we may have to work with Microsoft to fix things on the back end. And we've done it. We've done it before. It's been very successful, but you have to prepare for the unknown, things that might happen. So give yourself plenty of time. Don't wait till that plus 30 or it's a minus 30. The one after your renewal date is up. We'll make sure we're well in process by the time that happens.
Right. Avoid that last deadline there that comes up very quickly, I'm sure, for those who aren't prepared. And yeah, last question, does indirect still require a Microsoft support plan?
Jason, that's a great question and one that comes up all the time that I think is confusing. It's another value kind of benefit to go into the indirect model because direct partners do require basically an AFSP plan or a premier support. And those are going up in cost every year. They're going up again this year. And I know Microsoft's moving everybody eventually to what they call unified support, which is going to go through and be even more expensive, for partners to maintain. And as a direct partner, you have to have that. As an indirect partner, you do not have to go through and have that. You can go through and leverage your distributor. We as Stratos Cloud Alliance hold the premier support, with Microsoft. So a partner can save themselves by not having that support plan, depending upon what plan they get, anywhere between $20,000 to $60,000 annually. Which again, if you want to offset that against the couple points in margin that they may lose, they'd certainly go through and make that up by not having to go through and have a support plan and be able to leverage basically their distributor for their support. They can still maintain a support plan if they want to, obviously, but they're not required to like they are under the direct kind of agreement.
Well, those are all the rapid fire questions I had for you. And we've gone through a lot today. I've certainly learned a lot on what the latest changes are and how to think about them. I really want to thank all three of you for taking the time to chat with me today and help hopefully educate our listeners.
Great. Well, we certainly appreciate Microsoft Dynamics World having us and all that you guys do to kind of educate partners and keep them informed on what's going on. We here at Stratos Cloud Alliance are continue to go through and enable our partners to do more. If you're interested in finding out more about our indirect partner program to move from direct to indirect, or if you're a indirect partner already with another distributor and that you're interested in finding out what we can do to help you be more profitable, basically make the transition efficient and smooth as we've talked about today, certainly, hit our website at stratoscloud.com. Reach out to myself or Val or Susan in LinkedIn, and we'd be happy to go through and answer any additional questions that come up.
All right, excellent. Yeah. And Susan, Valerie, thanks to you both as well.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jason.